Hello, and welcome to Simple Finance Bytes. I'm Ernest, and today we're answering what sounds like a really simple question. How much money should you actually keep in your checking account? A lot of financial advice pushes you toward keeping checking as lean as possible because that money could be earning more somewhere else. I look at it differently. Your checking account isn't an investment account, it's an operating account. And my rule is simple: keep one full month of your normal household expenses in checking. Not 1 month of salary, not some random $5,000 or $10,000 number somebody gave you. 1 month of what your household actually spends. Today, I'm going to explain how to calculate that number, why I think 1 month works so well, and where the rest of your cash should go after checking is full. There is a very reasonable argument for keeping as little money as possible in checking. Checking accounts often aren't where you go looking for the best return on your cash. So the argument goes something like this. Keep just enough money in checking to pay the immediate bills. Put everything else into savings, a money market account, treasury bills, investments, or somewhere else where the money has a chance to earn more. On paper, that sounds efficient. And mathematically, there is some truth to it. But this is where I think personal finance can become more complicated than it needs to be. Because your goal isn't to squeeze the maximum possible return out of every single dollar every single day. Your goal is to build a financial system that works. And some money has an operating job. Think about everything that happens inside your checking account during a normal month. Your mortgage or rent comes out. Your credit cards get paid. Utilities clear. Insurance premiums come out. Maybe your phone bill, internet bill, subscriptions, and other automatic payments are hitting the account. Then you're spending money on groceries, gas, restaurants, household stuff, and all of the other things that don't happen on one clean schedule. Meanwhile, your paycheck might arrive every 2 weeks, or twice a month, or on some other schedule. Now imagine you're trying to keep your checking account as close to empty as possible while all of that is happening. You're constantly matching incoming money against outgoing money. Did the paycheck hit yet? Did the mortgage clear? When does the credit card autopay come out? Do I need to move $800 back from savings before Thursday? That's not necessarily a financial disaster, but it is work. And in my opinion, it's unnecessary work. Checking should make your financial life boring. It should be the account you don't have to babysit. And this is something that I had to learn personally, and the reason I adopted this system that we're talking about today. I used to do exactly that. I used to try to keep as little in checking as possible, the rest of it in my high yield savings account, because I could transfer it instantly back and forth. And then I realized I'm spending more time trying to figure out when I need to move money back and forth than if I had just come up with a ballpark number, kept it in there to begin with, and just accepted the fact that maybe I'm not going to get the high interest on that little bit there for that 1 month. And at the end of the day, that amount is so small, it really doesn't matter. So it's not worth the effort of trying to move things back and forth all the time. And there's another part of this that I think gets lost in the conversation. And this is, again, the part that I had to kind of come to terms with. People sometimes describe money sitting in a checking account as if it's doing nothing. And generally speaking, when you're talking about interest and return, that's why that seems that way. But it isn't doing nothing. It's buying you operational stability. It's making sure the electric bill can clear without you thinking about it. It's making sure a bigger grocery week doesn't create a transfer. It's making sure the mortgage date and the paycheck date don't have to line up perfectly. That is a job. And not every dollar needs the same job. Some money should earn, some money should grow, some money should protect you against an emergency, and some money should simply be sitting there ready to pay the electric bill. That's why I don't look at this as maximizing interest on every dollar. I look at it as building the simplest system that lets a household run smoothly, and for me, that means giving checking enough money to actually do its job. Quick note. If you're finding this helpful, subscribe to Simple Finance Bytes and join the newsletter. You can also follow us on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook. Links to everything are in the show notes. So how do you actually figure out your checking target? This is where I want to make an important distinction. Do not use your income. Use your expenses. Let's say somebody brings home $7,500 a month. That doesn't mean they need $7,500 sitting in checking. Maybe their normal household spending is $5,000 and the remaining $2,500 normally goes towards savings or investing. The checking account doesn't need to hold the savings and investing money just because it came through the paycheck. We're trying to answer one question. How much does it normally cost to operate this household for 1 month? Start here. And I mean a real month, not just your fixed bills. Housing obviously counts. Utilities count. Insurance counts. But groceries count too. Gas counts. Normal dining or entertainment counts if that is part of your regular household budget. Household supplies count. Subscriptions count. If you regularly spend money on it during an ordinary month, it belongs in the calculation. This is not supposed to be your absolute survival number. We're not asking, what's the least amount of money I could possibly spend if I stopped doing everything fun and ate rice for 30 days? That's a different calculation, and we will cover that in a future podcast episode. This is your normal operating month. Let's use a completely made-up household here. Say housing is $2,000 a month. Utilities and communication bills come to about $400. Groceries and household spending are about $900. Transportation is around $600. Insurance and normal health expenses are about $500. And normal discretionary and miscellaneous spending is another $600. Add that up, and the household's normal monthly spending is about $5,000. That gives us the checking target, $5,000. Again, this is an example. Your number could be $3,200, could be $7,800, it could be $12,000. The point isn't the dollar amount. The point is the method. Expenses determine the number, not income. And you don't need to calculate this with ridiculous precision. If your average monthly expenses are $4,873.19, I don't think you need a checking account rule accurate to the penny. Just ballpark it at $5,000. Use a clean number that reasonably reflects what a normal month costs you. Look back at several ordinary months if you need to. Don't use the month where the water heater exploded, and don't use the month when you took a big vacation. But also don't use that weird month where almost nothing happened either. You're looking for normal. I use an app called Copilot Money. There are others out there like Monarch Money. They hook into your banking accounts as well as your credit card accounts, and they actually give you a visual representation of what you're spending every single month. That is an excellent way to track this, but you don't need to do that. You can just pull the last 3-6 months of your actual bank account statements and do it by hand. Either way, the outcome is the same. You get a ballpark number of what it costs you to operate your household for 1 month. And remember, this target is not a permanent balance that can never move. If your target is $5,000 and your paycheck lands tomorrow, your checking account might suddenly be at $8,000 or $9,000. That's fine. Then bills clear, spending happens, money goes towards saving and investing, the balance moves. The $5,000 is better thought of as the operating base you rebuild toward, not some number you have to micromanage every morning. And I think that distinction matters. Otherwise, we just created a new complicated system where you're constantly moving money around to maintain the perfect checking balance. That's the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. Your number also needs to change when your life changes. If your household used to cost $4,000 a month to operate and it now costs $5,500, your checking target probably needs to change too. Maybe you moved. Maybe childcare went up. Maybe insurance went up. Maybe you've added or removed a major monthly expense. You don't have to review this every week, but when normal household spending meaningfully changes, update the number. Simple systems don't mean frozen systems. They just mean the rules are easy to understand. And this rule is 1 normal month of actual expenses in your checking account. Now let's get to the part I think matters most. Why 1 month? Why not 2 weeks? Why not $2,000? Why not just enough to cover the bills before your next paycheck? Because once you have a full normal month sitting there, something changes. Payday starts to matter a lot less. And I think that's one of the most underrated improvements you can make to your cash flow system. If the money required to run the next month is already sitting in checking, then the timing of this week's paycheck and this week's bill stops being the center of your financial life. The mortgage can hit on the 1st. Your paycheck can arrive on the 3rd. It doesn't matter. The money was already there. The electric bill can be higher than normal this month. Fine. The money was already there. Your grocery spending can be a little higher because you stocked up on something. That's okay. You're not immediately asking whether you need to pull money from savings. 1 month in checking turns paycheck timing into background noise. And I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying 1 month of checking is an emergency fund all by itself. We'll get to emergency reserves in the next section. The first month has another job. Its job is to operate, and that distinction is important. Because if you call every dollar beyond today's bills an emergency fund, then normal monthly spending starts competing with emergency savings. I don't want that. I want checking to handle normal life. Then I want emergency money sitting behind the checking. Different job, different layer. Here's another way to think about it. Imagine your checking target is $5,000. You start the month with that operating base already available. Your income comes in during the month. Instead of that income being desperately needed to pay whatever bill happens to hit next, it is replenishing the system and funding what comes after the checking account. Savings, investing, other goals. Now your household is less dependent on the exact sequence of deposits and withdrawals, and that makes automatic payments easier too. You don't have to schedule every credit card payment based on payday. You don't have to ask whether the insurance bill and mortgage are hitting in the same week. You can let the checking account do what a transaction account is supposed to do, handle transactions. Yes, there's FDIC insurance and NCUA insurance for your different types of checking accounts. That doesn't mean you should keep unlimited amounts of cash in one account. It just reinforces the idea that insured deposit accounts have a different job from investments. And one more practical point. Some people still think they need to avoid moving money from savings because federal rules only allow 6 transfers a month. That old federal regulation D limit was removed in 2020 as part of the COVID stuff. A bank can still have its own rules or fees, so make sure you check your account agreement, but the old federal 6 transfer rule itself is no longer the reason to build this system. But even though you can move money back and forth more often, I don't think that means you should design a system that requires you to. That's the bigger point. If every month requires multiple savings to checking transfers just to cover completely predictable spending, I would ask whether checking is properly funded in the first place. Why create extra steps when the alternative is simply to leave enough operating cash in the operating account? There is a point where chasing financial efficiency creates administrative inefficiency. You might gain a little more interest, but now you're spending more attention. Now you're spending more time, more transfers, more balance checks, more opportunities to make a timing mistake. I'm willing to accept a small amount of theoretical inefficiency in exchange for a financial system I barely have to think about. I'm willing to make the trade-off for mental peace. That's part of what Simple Finance Bytes is about. Simple works, complex doesn't. And the goal here is not to keep the smallest possible checking balance. The goal is to stop thinking about checking. So now we've got the first layer, 1 month of normal expenses in your checking account. What happens to the rest? This is where the broader Simple Finance Bytes cash system comes together. I think of it as 3 jobs. Checking operates, savings reserves, the Treasury layer backs everything up. Let's go back to that $5,000 example. If the household's normal monthly expenses are $5,000, the first $5,000 belongs in your checking account. That is 1 operating month. The next 2 months of expenses, another say $10,000 in this example, go into a high yield savings account. Now you've got 3 months accounted for. Month 1 is operating a checking account. Months 2 and 3 are sitting in savings in your high yield savings account. Then, if your emergency fund target goes beyond that, additional emergency reserves can sit farther back in a short-term Treasury fund inside of a brokerage account. In the official Simple Finance Bytes system, that Treasury fund is VBIL, but SGOV can serve essentially the same short-term Treasury role. Both currently invest around the 0 to 3 month Treasury bill end of the market. But this is where I want to make a really important distinction. A Treasury ETF is not a savings account. It isn't FDIC insurance. It trades on an exchange. Its market price fluctuates a little. And if you sell ETF shares, securities generally settle under the T+1 settlement cycle 1 business day after the trade date, before you even get into whatever time your brokerage and bank may require to move cash where you need it. That's exactly why I don't want the money that pays tomorrow's mortgage sitting in there. The first month belongs in checking because checking is immediate operating money. The next 2 months belong in savings because savings is still very accessible reserve money. The Treasury layer is farther back because you should have time before you need it. This is also where episode 18 and today's episode connect. In episode 18, we talked about what happens when normal financial infrastructure breaks and how quickly you can get to money in an emergency. Today's episode is the everyday version. This is what the system looks like when everything is working normally. You aren't preparing for the power grid going down. You're preparing for Tuesday, bills, groceries, payday, auto pay, normal life. And the same basic principle applies. Money should be positioned according to the job it needs to do. I think that is much more useful than asking where can this dollar earn the absolute highest yield? Because the answer might be somewhere that makes the dollar worse at its actual job. The money that pays the mortgage doesn't need to be a high-performing asset. It needs to be there when the mortgage comes out. The money that protects you from a job loss needs to be safe and accessible. Money you won't need immediately can sit farther away. And your long-term investment money has another job entirely. This is one reason I try not to mix all of these categories together. If you have $40,000 sitting in checking, you might look at that number and feel like you have a huge amount of spending money, but maybe $30,000 of that is actually your emergency reserve. Now you've mixed operating money with backup money. I'd rather have the checking account tell the truth. This is the money available to operate the household. Behind it is savings, and behind that is the deeper reserve. And if you're still building towards this system, don't turn the finished version into a prerequisite. You don't need to wake up tomorrow with 3 months of expenses sitting around before this concept becomes useful. Start with the operating target. Figure out your number, then build toward it. Once checking is where you want it, build a savings layer. Then build whatever deeper emergency reserve makes sense for your household. The final structure might take time, and that's okay. The value is knowing what each next dollar is supposed to do. Once your checking account has enough money to run the household, every extra dollar should be given a different job. Let me leave you with the simple rule. Keep 1 full month of your normal household expenses in your checking account. Not 1 month of salary, not an arbitrary number, not the smallest balance you can possibly get away with. Your actual normal expenses. If your household normally spends $5,000 a month, your operating target is about $5,000. Then keep the next 2 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account. Additional emergency reserves can sit farther back in a short-term Treasury layer, such as VBIL or SGOV. Checking operates, savings reserves, the Treasury layer backs you up. And remember the bigger point. Money sitting in a checking account isn't automatically wasted money. If that money is letting your household run without constant transfers, overdraft anxiety, or dependence on your next paycheck, it is doing exactly what you put it there to do. The goal isn't to squeeze the maximum return out of every dollar. The goal is to build a money system that works when you're busy and you aren't thinking about money. Quick security reminder, because we're talking about the account that handles most of your household transactions. Turn on multi-factor authentication for your bank account and your email account if you haven't already done that. Make sure you use unique passwords, and make sure account alerts are enabled wherever available. And a quick disclaimer, this podcast is financial education, not individualized financial advice. Your income, expenses, taxes, insurance coverage, and financial situation are unique, so make decisions that fit your own circumstances. If this episode helped, subscribe to Simple Finance Bytes, join the newsletter, and follow us on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook. And if you've been enjoying the show, leaving a review helps other people find it. You'll find the newsletter, the full written article on this topic, the website, and all of our current social links in the show notes. Until next time, keep it simple, stay focused, and take control of your financial future.